Hello, everyone. Welcome to mini session episode 21, right?
Yep.
And then, so if you're new here, welcome to Uncut Exception. We do these sessions weekly every 9 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. So this session usually has two speakers, usually, and it usually lasts for an hour. But for this session, uh, sorry about that. For this session, we have Arnelle is going to talk about CSS Logical Properties. So he's the only speaker. So I think it will only last for about 30 minutes, I guess. So let's have Arnelle.
Yep. Hi everyone. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Uh, so welcome. In this session, I'll be sharing about CSS Logical Properties. But before we get into that, uh, let's take a look at how we traditionally use CSS. Style stuff using CSS first. So here we have an example paragraph with text. So this is English, so text flows from left to right, top to bottom, and then we have CSS here. We don't need JS. Oh no, how to collapse JS? Anyway, so let's try adding some CSS to this paragraph. So we can do something like, for example, I want a red border on on the start of the text with some padding in between. So we can do something like border left, let's say for px with red, and then padding left, which would be 20px. So it would look something like that. We can add some spacing at the top on the left, or we can set a width, for example. Oops. Yeah, width. Let's set it to 400 pixels, for example. Somewhere else. So that we have a maximum width, we can set margins top to, let's say, x, and margin left x to add some spacing around. So this is traditionally how we do CSS. Uh, then if you've ever worked with apps where we need support for different languages, for example, there are languages that are not like English that goes from left to right, but for example, Arabic, text flows from right to left, or Japanese, I think, goes from top to bottom. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. Um, we get into we need to do additional things in our CSS to support those. For example, let's say this text suddenly becomes Arabic, so we would normally have to support right to left text direction. So we can say something like RTL, and text will flow from the right to the left. So it doesn't look that way because we're still using English characters. But if this were Arabic, this would make sense. But here we see our problem. Our border and the padding, which is supposed to be at the start of the text, is already at the end, because in Arabic or other RTL languages, this here at the right is the start of their text. So to fix that, traditionally we would do something like an extra CSS, so specific for right to left content, and then we would switch these properties around. So we would say uh, we would we would reset the border left to initial to remove this. We would also set padding left to initial and margin left to initial, and then we would add our new CSS to support RTL. So we will have border right for px red, padding right, we would have 20px, and then margin right, which would be px. So now this works. Oops. Does that work? RTL. Oh no, we're not working. Oh no, this is not supposed to be. Okay. Uh, that should be correct actually. I type dir, not div. So here we achieve the same, I mean the correct result for RTL languages. So that way we were able to support both LTR or left to right and right to left languages. But that takes a lot of CSS. We have to reset some properties to set new ones. So this is a lot of code. Um, that's because when we do this styling, like when we do border left, padding left, margin top, we are styling things relative to their physical position on the screen. So when you're looking the screen, we style the left part. So when you say word margin left, we're explicitly saying like on the physical left of the text, so something like that. But what CSS logical properties does is they make those styles relative to the flow of the content. So instead of saying left, which is like the physical left, we would say something like set a margin at the start of the content or set the margin at the end of the content. So that would take context depending, I mean, that would be different depending on the context. So if it's left to right text, margin, I mean, the start of the text would be the left, right? But if it's right to left context, the start of the content will be at the right side. So that makes it easy to handle all those different like directions of our text. So to simplify this CSS, we can do something like we can convert um, this border left, padding left, etc. to use logical properties. So how do we do that? Let's start. Let's comment out. Let's comment them out for now. So let's start with border left. So uh, okay, I'm just going to start with the actual like CSS, then we'll explain later. So this would border left here would become border inline start for PX solid red. And padding left would become padding inline start. It into PX. So let's save that and we get the same result. Margin top would become margin black start. This may not make sense until we explain it later. And margin inline start, which would be 50x. And with that, we don't need this entire thing anymore. So let's save that. So as you see, we get the same result. But if switch the direction to RTL, get a correct result also. We just minimal CSS. So what's inline block start also, and it's to refer to the other side. So in CSS logical properties, there it's basically thinking of two axes. So we have so let's say if we are writing English, which is text content flows from left to right, then top to bottom. Our there's there is an inline axis and the block axis. So if you've studied Flexbox before, maybe you've heard of inline and block, but just in case, inline axis runs parallel to the text as you are writing them. For example, you're writing English, so you write text from left to right. That parallel to that, that's your inline axis. And your black axis is the one perpendicular. So for example, if we are writing Arabic, so we write text from right to left. The inline axis would be horizontal, but it goes from right to left. If we are writing Japanese, which I think goes from top to bottom, so our inline axis will be top to bottom, and then our black axis will be left to right. So inline and block, inline basically means this axis is parallel to how you would write is parallel to the direction of the content flow as you're writing the text. And then black axis is like the one perpendicular to that. Start and end means start and end. So if your text goes from left to right, start would be left, end would be right. If your text goes from right to left, start would be right, end would be left. So just think of it in terms of like axis, and because once you know the direction of your text, figure out where is your inline axis and the black axis, and then start and end. Where does the axis start? Where does the axis end? And then that's how you figure out your logical properties. Um, let's try how like flexible this is. So let's try to make it go from this. Let's try to make this text go from top to bottom to like kind of simulate like Japanese text. Because I don't know how to type Japanese. So let's just set the writing direction to vertical, left to right. And let's remove this. Writing direction or writing mode? Okay, it's actually writing mode. So here we've made our content go from top to bottom. I just pretend these are Japanese characters. So here it's now going from top to bottom. As you can see, our border and our padding is still in the correct position. It's at the start of the content in the inline axis. So this looks correct. But here we see another problem. We're setting width, which is relative to the physical width. So when you say width, it's always like horizontal on the screen. But in this case, that's not what we want. So there's also logical properties to set dimensions like width or height. So in this case, width, we can set inline size. So this will be correct. So this is for like vertical content. If we remove this, because in this case, inline axis is already like from top to bottom. So when you say inline size, then if physically, if you look at the screen, it's setting the height of this paragraph into 400px. But if we switch it back to left to right, it's setting the width of the text, which is because the inline axis already goes from left to right. So this is basically what in CSS logical properties are. Because there's also some nice shortcuts. For example, if you want to set both sides of the axis, like both start and end, you can just say border inline. Or also, let's put it here, border inline. So things like that. So that can simplify some things. There's a lot of available properties for like there are a lot of available CSS logical properties. So here we see a block size and inline size, which are for setting dimensions. So max and mean block and inline sizes. Then here we see all the like border properties, margin properties, padding properties. These are the equivalent logical properties for those. Logical properties are also available for float and clears and these other stuff that I haven't used before. So text align, instead of text align left or right, you can just say text align start or end, so that will take the direction of the content into consideration already. So that's pretty much it for CSS logical properties. Hope you start using it and see if it makes your life easier when dealing with multiple languages and different directions of content. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it. Anyone have has a question, like for the viewers, you can leave a comment below the FT post and the
I,
YouTube video.
I
Question?
actually have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Um, so like I think this would be like a big problem for a lot of existing technologies that they want to support, for example, Japanese or Arabic languages, because normally I am a background developer, so if I want to support, for example, um, Arabic in my Django application, I'll just add like an ARPO file to support translations for this. But in the front end, it seems to be a lot of work. Like you need to change all your CSS rules. Are there tools that we could use to automate this or to do the refactor for us to make it work the way we want to, or do we have to do the job manually to transition
Yes.
from?
So um, about like tools to do this automatically, I haven't checked yet, but I'm sure there are code mods like tools out there, but we'll check. But for me personally, what I've been doing is um, so I haven't like done like a complete rewrite of everything in a code base to convert to sociological rules. But what I do is for new, because existing code base that I work with, they already have handling for the one we saw before where you add extra CSS to handle RTL. Uh, so I just leave them alone. But for new, what do you call that? For new like CSS to be added, you can start adapting logical properties going forward, and then if you find time in the future, or maybe you make it a priority to like rewrite everything in the past to logical properties, then you can do that at some point. But yes, doing that, I mean, doing the major factor in the front end, it's a lot of work.
Uh, Follow-up question to that. This is probably something that I can Google myself, but do you know if like the famous front end frameworks like Bootstrap support these, or no? Like I would assume some a technology as mature as Bootstrap supports RTL in some way. Because me personally, as a backend developer, I just write front end code. When I write front end code, I hardly write any CSS. I just Google the Bootstrap classes to add, and then I just add them. So it would be like nice to know. You're muted, Arnelle. You are muted, Arnelle.
Sorry. About that also, I don't have answer without checking. So let me just do a quick check if um, they do. Let's check Bootstrap repo. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen, but it's fine. Choose. Okay. This make. So I think Bootstrap doesn't support it yet, but so I'm reading on their issue tracker. This comment is from yesterday, so maybe not anytime soon. But according to Bootstrap, it's already in discussion to support. So I think Bootstrap doesn't support RTL already. Does it? Maybe it's an extra. I think it's an extra Bootstrap like library to support RTL. I'm not sure. I think so. But according to this comment from yesterday, it's already being discussed to support like RTL within Bootstrap itself. But they're saying it cannot be used all throughout their code base, but for most properties like spacing, margin padding, it can be done. And in probably just speculation in the comment, probably in V6, they will mostly rely on logical properties only. I think currently Bootstrap is in V5. Let me check V5. I don't use Bootstrap that much. What's the latest? Yeah, latest is V5. So maybe in the next version of Bootstrap, but right now it doesn't. As for the other um, like CSS libraries, I'm not sure. Let me check quickly if Tailwind does it. Bootstrap. Sorry for the awkward silence.
There's a package called Tailwind RTL.
Ah, okay, Tailwind, um, I'm not sure it is supported, but they're saying they want to support it as a plugin first before integrating it directly into Tailwind. So maybe now it's not yet logical properties is not yet widely used across these CSS libraries, but I think that would make sense because they want to make sure that these libraries, uh, because they are widely used across different like browsers, different users, they have to make sure that they work for most browsers. So I think they're taking their time, waiting for support, and yeah.
Alright, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions, so thank you for that, Kiaman. Uh, so I don't see any questions on the comment sections. So I think we will end it here. So that's a quick session for tonight. By the way, if you're watching, we will have a guest next week, special guest. So be sure to like or follow the page for more updates and subscribe to the channel. So if you have some questions or topics you want us to talk about, just leave a comment on the video. And if you find today's discussion helpful, don't forget to hit the like button. And for more tech updates and discussions like this, just click subscribe. That's
Yes.
it for
Wait,
this
before,
episode.
wait.
Okay,
Maybe
okay.
we can
Okay, okay, okay.
announce it here at the end of the video. Maybe I
Okay.
think every month at the last, during the last episode of each month, we'll try to invite like other guest speakers to, so that it's just not us. Maybe you're
Oh,
bored
yeah.
of our faces already. And also on March,
First
on the
week,
first
March.
episode for March, which I
Yeah,
don't
first
know the
week.
date, on the first episode for March, which would be March 6th, um, us, like the team, the group, will be doing a hackathon and we'll just be streaming it. Will be random. We will be building random stupid stuff. So and we'll stream the entire thing. So if you want to see us build random stuff, then you can watch.
See a struggle.
See the
Good
struggle.
baby stuff.
So we have like a loose mechanic for the hackathon already. So we'll be picking a random technology. We'll study it ahead of time, but we'll make sure we haven't used it before. And then it will be like we'll have three prompt words to give us an idea of what we will
Oh
build,
no.
and then everything's up for interpretation after that. So it should be fun. We've done similar hackathons in the past, but it should be fun. So see you next week and next week.
See you next week. Yeah,
Bye.
the couple of weeks will be exciting. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.